No, I'm sorry. I've just spilled coffee everywhere, but it doesn't matter. I'll sort that out later.
That's fine. Good. Okay, so we may as well just dive into it. Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of the RetailCraft podcast. We've got a really packed episode, so let's dive straight in with Mark Wright, Global Operations Director at Fatface. Now, Mark's experience spans being Head of Trading at M&S and Managing Director Multichannel at Jack Wills. But in his current role at Fatface, he had the operational and trading reins just as the world headed into lockdown. So let's hear from Mark. Hey, Mark, welcome to the podcast. Thank you. And again, sorry we can't say welcome to our lovely studio. We're just going to say welcome from our various bedrooms around the place. So, Mark, tell us a bit about your role and a bit about Fatface.
Thank you, Ian, and it's great to join you today. Yes, I've just done my first year anniversary at Fatface. So I joined in June 19, and my role is Global Operations Director, which sounds very grand and does mean that I now get abbreviated to the title of God internally, which is not an ego boost myself, but does cause regular Mickey taking at work. And I look after all of our store base. So our stores that most people will be familiar with in the UK, I think, but we've also got over 20 stores in the US. I also look after e-com and I look after people. So I am responsible for our people team and our HR agenda.
So that kind of is quite godlike.
Yes, I guess so, yeah.
Well, let's step back a bit because, those of us of a certain age have known, Fatface since it erupted into a relatively tired clothing market and seemed to clothe every student on a skateboard, from north to south. Now, over the years, of course, we've changed, the brand has changed, consumers have changed. So where does it fit into the world now?
Yeah, I think for those that aren't as familiar, so the brand started with two founders, Tim and Jules, who had a passion for skiing. Most people think we're a surf brand actually by origin, but actually it was the slopes that inspired the business. And they did the whole camper van and selling T-shirts and items out of the van in the Alps. And that was the birth of Fatface, named after La Face, which is a run that I'm pleased to say I've been at the top of and at the bottom of, but not all the bits in between.
I say, what happened in between?
in Val d'Isère. So that's the birth of the brand. And it very much, at that point, it was disruptive. It was about a different approach to the lifestyle sector, all focused on casual wear. And I think in terms of how the business has grown, it was very male-centric to begin with because of the background of Tim and Jules. And now the majority of our business comes from women's wear. We don't describe ourselves as a high fashion brand, but we have a segment of customers that we serve very well and still position very much as a family business selling women's, men's and kids and all wholly owned. So, we're in that unique position that we sell through our own channels and now increasingly looking at how we place ourselves to extend our reach.
Great. Now, you mentioned the US, just like throwaway in passing, we have 20 stores. Is that the extent of your globality, so of UK and 20 US, or are you more diversely global than that?
No, so from a store presence point of view, it's UK, Ireland, and then US. And in the US, we've got our own stores that are all based around New England, so sort of Massachusetts down to Connecticut, and looking actually, we opened our first store near Washington at the end of this week. So we are continuing in that vein. We also have a partnership with Von Maur, who have us in 35 departmental stores out in the US as well. But beyond that, no, we're not got any other physical presence in Europe or the rest of the world.
So a couple of years ago, we went through the surfwear wave, if I could pun a little, and everything was surfwear or beachy. We've had the fast fashion, and now, thanks to lockdown, we seem to be in an emergence of loungewear. Is this going to help you? Is this now the moment for Fatface's casual wear to take over the world if you're not wearing jogging pants? Or, how is that going to affect your business?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I think we've seen some amazing trends come through from this. So we did see a spike in loungewear. We saw sales of nightwear going through the roof in the first sort of 3 to 4 weeks of this period. But what we've also seen is a shift into other areas as well. So like we're talking on screen now, we've seen very much an investment in tops. Jewelry, be it earrings or necklaces, have done better than rings or handbags or footwear. So I think the whole way that we're living through this is changing the way consumers are investing their well-earned money in terms of fashion. I think the fact we're casual wear, I think, is a real advantage in the main. But then also things like dresses and new smart shorts for gents, through the good weather that we had at Easter and May, we've definitely seen people investing in those areas. And I think it's value, to answer your earlier question, that will see us stand out. We have got strong presence in coastal locations, and those will do well. They had a very good week last week as people start to go out and think about, with the changes in the rules, spend some time near the sea. But I think it's the value piece that will see us grow and I think make us stand out against the peer group at the moment.
Well, it's certainly a turbulent time. As we're recording this, we're seeing quite a number of, high street stalwarts, especially those in the more formal, semi-formal end, with its, shirt makers in the UK, Brooks Brothers in the US, definitely having a tougher time. So maybe they should have got the tie pins back into fashion for those Zoom calls. Now, I've been very remiss. I haven't said congratulations, because Fatface ranked elite in our brand index. So congratulations.
Thank you very much.
So we are tracking hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of brands across Europe selling direct to consumer. And you've always ranked well, but this year you've made a massive leap and are elbowing some major brands out of the way. Is that in any way a coincidence with your appointment, Mark, or were things going well before?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. I'd love to say that, Ian. I would love to say that, but that's not my style. You know that. I think it's a fantastic brand and business to be part of. I think it's fairly unique in that everybody is working really hard together, particularly at these times, in terms of putting the customer journey first, really trying to listen and join things up. And that collaboration, I think, is fairly unique in terms of what I've experienced before. So, we have a store-dominated business, and physical experience in terms of retail is really important to us in Fatface, from the shop fits through to how our crew, which is how we term the teams in stores. It's how our crew interact with customers, from a great welcome through to going out of their way to help. So I think you've got a unique in-store experience and then a growing investment in terms of online, and trying to work out how we do that really well, but also connect with the customer in different ways as well. So our commitments to sustainability, which we've put a lot of time and energy into in the last 12 months. And then I think the other piece is brand engagement. So we are investing time in social and thinking about how do we build followers, but how do we share that story as we go through our social channels increasingly, rather than just in email or just in store.
So when you deliver innovation into your business, Mark, which I'm sure you're doing all the time, since this thing has happened, this whole COVID thing, has it changed the way in which you're doing things? Are you doing things faster? Are you doing things differently? Are you doing things in a way that you wouldn't have expected a few weeks ago?
Yeah, I think it's changed massively, Jamie. I think in so many ways. The first thing is, I think decision making has got a lot faster because it's had to. So we were a business, as I described with stores, most of our meetings would have been in the office. There would have been the occasional conference calls with stores, but use of video tech didn't exist. So all of a sudden, I think at every level, employees have become more accessible to each other, more visible, bizarrely, because you're seeing each other on screen all the time. So I think it's therefore flattened some of the decision-making hierarchy, and meant that with limited capacity, we really got focused into what's going to make a difference with a shorter term lens than perhaps we were used to as well. Very much making trading decisions within that week, having a critical eye over what words we were using, either for internal communication or external to customers. So I think it's been quite liberating. in a good way. And very much in the first stages, almost that survival mentality has brought people together, wanting to help the business or wanting to support each other. There's been quite a lot of challenge around what we're going to do, but not very much friction or arguments, if that makes sense. So a real willingness to move it on.
It's such an interesting point there, that balance between the clear immediacy of now, trading today, trading this week, and then the myriad possibilities of strategy and the later term. So, there is a glorious simplicity of being allowed to focus on now, whereas as a board, you're kind of paid to mull those difficult intangibles. So when you think about all the stuff you just chopped out, just rule of thumb, do you think you've chopped right down to the bone and you'll regret the focus in the medium term? Or do you think actually it's just been a clarifying purge and has helped us go back to values? So is this simplification short-term survival or a new, better way of prioritizing?
I do think it's both, Ian. I think it's a great point. I think it was a necessity born out of the situation in those early days and weeks. And I think some simple things around communication we have done and continue to do. So every day, 2 weeks before this started, so back at the start of March, did a daily business continuity call that ran 7 days a week and brought key functional heads together to say what's on the pad and also what's on people's minds. And that has become a critical decision-making point for the business and still is every single day. As a board, we've talked at the end of every day. So we've had calls at 4:30 every day to check in, which is as much around checking in on each other in terms of the challenges that have come up, but also then making sure we're aligned. I thought about sharing with you something I did right at the start of this. So on Sunday, the 15th of March, I went for a run, and it was the weekend before all hell broke loose, if you like. But I went for a run to clear my mind, and I found myself sat on a bench near the river, and I tapped in 5 notes into my phone, which were notes to myself, but they became a really important reference point, actually, through this. So the first note was be human. So that was, I just had a feeling it was going to go a bit silly. And at the heart of it, being human and putting yourself in other people's shoes and thinking about how messages were going to be received as well as delivered was really important. The second one, learnt from an old director at M&S that I hold this thought true quite often, but beware the law of unintended consequence. And I think trying to think about at least a step or 2 steps ahead, to your point, so you're not just making an immediate decision, you're thinking about where does that lead you to next, and that was really important. The third one was try and give yourself as much time, which sounds mad, but actually when you've got a crisis situation going on, the most precious entity that you wish you had more of was time. And therefore trying not to put myself under pressure, being the central sort of fulcrum for where the decisions were making, really helped, and helped other people take a bit of pressure off. And then the last couple were, one is common sense will prevail, which is kind of, well, it's a bit British gallows humour, I think, if I'm really honest. When all else has gone, you just hope that common sense will prevail. And the last one was lead, don't manage, which in the latter stages of this, thinking about how I was starting to hand over bits to people that were coming back to the business, because throughout this time, we had about 5% of the organisation working and 95% furlough, 2,500 employees, most of which would have been working in stores, but that wasn't possible. So really trying to think about setting people up. And those sort of principles I found really helpful. I shared with the team. And really, I didn't realise that writing those down on my phone on the 15th of March, it was then going to be 3 months before we opened our first stores up again. It's quite a surreal moment, really.
And how has the reopening gone?
Yeah, it's been interesting. I mean, I think overall we put a lot of energy into making sure our environments are safe, first and foremost, for our employees and then for anybody visiting. And that includes all of our stores and then our office and warehouse as well. So on the 15th of June, when we could, we opened up our first bunch of stores. So we opened 50 stores then. And I'm pleased to share that we now have over 200 stores open.
Wow.
And I think in that first week, there was a mixture of excitement for people being back in their shops again with their teams, quite high degrees of anxiety as to what was this going to feel like. And at this point, when we first opened, people had been encouraged to make a bubble with one other person and were suddenly leaving loved ones at home and coming into a store environment. So I think we put a lot of effort into the safety, the hygiene. We have the best smelling hand sanitizer on the high street, I think. And
so who judged that competition?
Yeah. Please do go and test it. And I think the first 2-3 days we traded up on the year like for like, which was fantastic.
Wow.
To actually have that kind of level of performance was brilliant. I think I would then describe it as we've gone through the phase of it's a bit like the new family Zoom quiz. So, there's a novelty factor of I haven't been shopping for 3 months, let's go out. And things have settled down now. But we're continuing to open our stores. We haven't opened stations and airports yet. But with the increase in sort of traffic that's likely to go through those with summer holidays, we're now looking at those as the last group. But overall, really pleased.
Aside from the difference in trading patterns and up one week and maybe not so up the next week or whatever, how have your customers, how have you felt they have reacted and how have they told you about what they're experiencing?
Yeah, I think overall, they have really appreciated the time and consideration we've put into the environment. So trying to make that safe, trying to make that clear, to be respectful that people will do different things. I mean, I think just before joining this call, I saw that Boris was about to announce that face coverings will become mandatory or a recommendation. So I think there's been a lot of changes in advice.
Mandatory.
Exactly. It's going to be...
But subject to common sense.
Don't draw me on that again, but it's going to be go shopping, don't go shopping, yes. Go shopping type of advice again. I think Matt Lucas will get ready for his next video tribute. So I think getting the safety bit right, first of all, they've appreciated, Jamie. I think we saw some of our loyal customers come back out and enjoy shopping with us and enjoy that physical interaction. We are all human beings and it's an important part of our lives. So I think trying to get that right has been critical.
And how has the, if you like, this sort of odd, out of time aspect hit you? Because, we had summer in March, autumn last week, bit warmer again now. What has that done to your stock position, your planning for next year? And the sun is still shining, so you could open with, beach-like stock. But how are you seeing the rest of the year?
Yeah, we were lucky and also part of clever planning, of course, but we put in some of our summer ranges back at the start of March, which is earlier than we had done before. So one of the things that was pleasing on reopening is we had quite a lot of lightweight dresses, tops, some shorts in. So actually in reopening the stores, it didn't feel completely out of touch with the weather and the mindset at that point in time. It was slightly odd taking Mother's Day POS down was one of the first jobs because that's the reality is we closed up just before Mother's Day and then opened up just in time for Father's Day. But I think I can't blame the weather this season because I think the glorious hot spells we've had have lifted the mood and encouraged people to shop and invest. And actually a little bit of colder weather in more recent weeks has been quite well timed where we've done a little bit of selected price activity to clear some of that product. The challenge at the moment really is trying to work through two stock pots because we've got an online performance that continues to be strong and robust and clearly a really important part of our future now. It always was, but it's accelerated. And yet actually we want our local customers to be able to go to their local market town and buy something from Fatface. And that's a real balancing act at the moment and something that we need to work out some better solutions for going forward. That's the dichotomy I think we've got to work out.
So has that changed your list of priorities of stuff to do that you had on your list before March the 15th or whatever your key date was, and what you're going to be focusing on now as the world has changed?
Yeah, I think, Jamie, it's accelerated it. I don't think it's changed anything. I think we already knew that was going to be important. But, when you go from e-com representing 20 to 25% of the business and then it's 100%, it really does sharpen the focus on everything. And indeed, the interesting piece of that is then the way that customers engage with us. So actually, one of the challenges I think for most clothing retailers will be returns. So all of a sudden, whereas we had a lot of footfall into stores, both purchasing and returning, we've then got everything arriving at the warehouse, at the distribution center. So resourcing that has changed. Thinking about how we message things on the website and tracing returns wasn't something that was high on the list and now is. So in every essence, I think it makes you think about the world in a different way.
Absolutely. So how have things changed for you personally? Because you had your epiphany on a park bench, which in years to come, people will refer to that in their little book.
I now
of
feel like
Mark.
Forrest Gump now you've played it back to me.
Well, that was in no way meant. So you had your insight there. We've had 3 months of lockdown, which, has changed a number of things. What has that changed about you? Have your 5 maxims stuck and become normal? Are there other things you've learned?
Yeah, it's a great question, Ian. I think one of the things I haven't yet gone right is using my saved commuting time for my personal well-being. So I've gone through stages of getting out on the bike and for some nice morning runs when I would have been in the car early driving down to Havant or somewhere else. And that's something I definitely need to improve. But
are you sleeping more or just working more?
Yeah, no, I am sleeping more. I don't mind fessing that up. I definitely seem to be sleeping more.
Now, of course, people can't tell from our young, handsome voices that we are men of a certain age. So my question, which is, going right in my head is, have we been sleep deprived for 30 years of our working lives and now is catching up pre-retirement? Or is it the lockdown that's made us more tired? I don't know about you, but sleep has definitely become my number one activity.
Yeah, well, I think I have a Garmin fitness watch, and that does track my sleep every day. And I used to laugh at it, never really paying any attention whatsoever. But now I think suddenly I'm starting to edge towards the required amount of sleep every night. So that's definitely something. I think other things on a sort of more serious work note. I think I've always tried to set context when talking to teams about what we're working through. And I think working through video screens has actually been very beneficial. So
really,
I think there's something about, it's almost like holding a mirror up to your leadership style, because when you can see yourself or you see people's reaction, I think we are more focused in the moment to things that we're saying. We've got to quite good etiquette using Microsoft Teams or Zoom now to raise hands when people are talking, and therefore it feels like an inclusive conversation rather than, I think perhaps people are more aware of things like that than they might be if they were in the room. So I definitely think there's been some changes in style.
And do you find that is working across the whole business? Because, we've had a sea change. One of my business partners was very office focused, didn't believe in home working, and he has just taken to it like the proverbial duck to water. But we have found some odd things, like the staff who've known each other for a long time, we've become politer to each other via video. But the younger people in the office, maybe they don't have a home office, or they live with parents, or they haven't had the structures of work for a long time. They are the ones that have been finding it harder than some of us. So, if you think about then taking that out, you mentioned the market towns, where, people's circumstances can be very different, their family lives are different, the progress of the virus locally is different, so many variables, yet you've only got the screen. So how have you managed to extend that sort of head office improvement to the whole business?
Yeah, I think it's different across different teams, if I'm honest. So, yeah, you referenced it, men of a certain age. I think there would have been an assumption that if people had been working from home, they wouldn't have been working from home. They would have been at home and doing some work. And that's just not true. I think people have worked harder than ever through this period and totally committed to it. And I think people have different work setups, and being very mindful of that some people may have an office set up, others are in a bedroom, a lot of people are in their kitchens, and have families that at the same time as people are working, they are homeschooling, they're looking after younger and older members of family. So I think we've all got a lot more cognizant of that. To go from having a distant relationship where you might see someone at work to being in their livelihoods day in, day out,
and in their rooms.
Rooms, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I think that lends itself. I mean, the amount of pets that have interrupted our team calls is immense. So I think there's that piece. The other piece I think that is challenging at times working this way is you don't get the coffee break moments of small talk. So what you don't get is that shared lift on the way to work, or the sort of small chat bits that do connect people. And I think trying to find ways that just keep, again, back to that being human, keep the mood light, keep it a bit more relaxed, because otherwise every work call can be very productive but very full on. And I definitely, staring at a screen in sort of weeks 3 and 4 became pretty knackering, because you felt you're on all the time. So starting to switch that up with phone calls, you don't need to see that somebody is at their desk working to be able to have a conversation with them, and vice versa. So I think being more flexible really is the heart of this.
It's interesting, though, that you reference the hard work, because I totally agree with that. I think people have been busier than ever. But back when I started working, it was all suit and ties. And there was this American import called Dress Down Friday. And I was working for a very large accountancy firm at the time, and they hired dress down consultants to help the partners know what to wear. So obviously you had chinos, button-down blue shirt, but they didn't have anything between Savile Row 3-piece suit and gardening cast-offs. There wasn't this, this is my real life and I'm just more relaxed. So it'll be interesting, not only from a company perspective, but also, again, whether that will play into the hands of the brand as people become more compassionate and chilled out.
I was just going to say, and you seem to listen to their advice quite well, just looking at your garb you've got on right now. So anyway, Mark, you were going to say.
This is why this is not a film video call, it's just a podcast.
No, I've gone the other way. See, so I introduced Dress Up Friday in. So we started doing a weekly quiz, and I thought it was important to go with the theme. So I put a suit and tie on for our quiz. I did a flashing bow tie one week for the entertainment round. And even the Easter Bunny outfit came out for Easter. So I think it's important to embrace the change and go the other way.
Yeah, I'm ringing HR now. I can feel the urge.
So you have to speak to me as well. It's okay.
So, Mark, just to round off, what's exciting you then? Getting back to a semblance of non-lockdown, what's on your executive agenda that's of interest?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think excitement is probably not the emotion that sort of comes to mind at the moment. But I think what is making me both excited and feel proud is right across the industry that we work in, that people have really stepped up and started to think about how do they transform their business, what's right for their teams and their employees, which I think is so important at the moment. That actually, we talk about customers, but the nature of this pandemic is about trying to do the right thing for our people all the step of the way. And I feel really excited that we can all learn some different lessons out of this and give ourselves the chance to think about how we adjust how we do business.
Wow.
I think from a customer point of view, digital was already important. I think that's just accelerated massively. And what's important to the customer going forward is going to, I think, become really clear really quickly, which is about quality and value for money, as it has often been. I think trends will change, like we've talked about relaxed casual wear and loungewear. I think sustainability is an interesting one, because it was very much in the mind of the consumer before all of this happened. And I think along the way, I just think this from a life point of view, people are now drinking out of plastic cups. We are throwing lots of stuff away because from a hygiene point of view, it's almost the amount of plastic bags that have been given out for people to do food shopping at a time that it was only a month before all this started, that bags for life and reusable was so important. So I think it's going to be interesting where that lands in terms of how important that is in the long term. But something certainly from our business point of view, we take really seriously. We already did paper carrier bags for shops. And then we moved to a paper recycled bag for all of our e-com orders back before Christmas last year. And we've continued that commitment because this shouldn't be a sort of flash in the pan moment. This is about sustained commitments to the planet as well as people. So I think that's going to be interesting to see what new trends emerge.
Great. Well, look, I think you've given us enough there to run a couple of conferences and our commentary program for the rest of the year. Mark, absolute pleasure chatting to you again, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Ian. Great to speak to you. And good to see you too, Jamie. All the best.
Thanks, Mark, for that typically broad-ranging, thoughtful, and open contribution. Let's switch now to eBay. Our interest in this marketplace giant was piqued as our research showed a continued growth in marketplaces as a preferred consumer destination. RetailX research over the summer shows around 53% of all consumer visits start on a marketplace. And so we thought we'd look a little deeper into how these marketplaces can be used by major retailers and brands. And to that end, we chatted with Murray Lambell, the Vice President of UK Trading at eBay. Murray has a particular focus on getting larger retailers and brands onto the platform, so we asked him to tell us more, including how we can access his 27 million customers. Tell us a little bit, first of all, about your role and just a thumbnail sketch in case there's anyone on the planet who's never heard of eBay.
Well, pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me in this much more relaxed environment than it used to be in the old world. You can be in your house and have the safety of that around you. So I work on the commercial business for eBay UK, so I look after that in the UK. And eBay in the UK, around 27 million buyers. So pretty much every household's got an account, uses it every month. We're about 70% of our businesses selling to consumers. And then we have obviously the business that many people know and love, which is consumers selling to other consumers, which historically has been via an auction platform. So that kind of gives you a bit of a flavour of eBay in the UK. Most consumers want something that's quick and easy to get. So they want to be able to go online, find an item and buy it. Outside of that, you're always going to have a set of bespoke needs or desires. So some items will sell very well at auction. It's very hard to gauge the price. It works really well. Another format is enabling a buyer to propose a price to the seller so that they can then do their own negotiation, which is outside of an auction format. And that works very well. So you kind of got the majority of consumers that want quick, easy, help me find what I need. And then you've got a load of behaviours and types of inventory that work well in the niches around the edges a little bit, which is some of the stuff that you're talking about. So the beauty of the internet is it can cater for all of these individual desires and interests, which is good, I suppose.
Now, our focus is unashamedly on retailers and brands. And because I'm old, I can remember the early days when people didn't really pay much attention to marketplaces. They had their perfect brand space or their fully controlled retail environment. But we're just seeing marketplaces grow and grow. So tell us a little bit about how you're seeing the adoption of the marketplace by those formerly known as retailers, as well as brands going direct to consumers.
It's been a transformation over time and probably really acutely over the last 5 to 7 years. And the last 3 months have been an exaggerated transformation of that trend, I think, that we've been seeing. And the reason is that you've got lots and lots of consumers who want to go somewhere where they can find inventory and buy in a safe environment, and that's what their need is. And as they've done that, brands and retailers have realized they need to be where the customer is wanting to go. So that's really been the evolution. My recollection would be 5 to 7 years ago when I would be turning up at a brand talking to them about the opportunities that a marketplace presented. You were kind of the pariah. You were a problem, and it was difficult to understand how this was really going to work, and wasn't it all about destroying value of the brand? I think that conversation is now much more mature and much more developed. So when I engage with many big retailers and big brands, they understand the value, and some of them have bespoke needs, which a marketplace environment and eBay will be trying to cater for. And that's the right conversation. So we have the buyers. how do we help your inventory and your brand show up in the right way that suits you? And there's kind of a meeting of minds. And I find the conversations are now just much more strategic and thoughtful about how we enable brands to make the most of the marketplace opportunity that we see on eBay.
So can you give me an example? So as an eBay user, I'm tootling around. I generally tend to be product focused or search driven, but it all kind of looks the same to me. I look for what I want, I get what I want, job done. From a retailer perspective, what has changed? What do you offer them that has made the whole experience more palatable? Is it behind the scenes technology, better reporting, secret sauce that is sprinkled on it by eBay magic pixies? What has that move to the retailer? What's that really mean?
First and foremost, we have to show up to the buyer in a way that shows products for their beauty and wonder, right? That's really what you want to create, a lovely shopping experience. So you have lots of destination shoppers, you also have lots of browsing shoppers, and you want the shopper to show up and see a product. So lots about product images, lots about descriptions, and then giving the buyer the ability to find and discover. So they look at something and then they can explore further into a category, or then they can move across categories. From a retailer or a brand's perspective, it's the ability to understand, well, how do I make my product on brand stand out? And what levers do I have? How do I have my storefront? And how do I make my product item stand out from others? And all of those are options that we make available. And the idea is it's a democratic environment. They're equally available to a small business which is just starting out, to a multinational retailer or brand. And then it's really up to your choice about how you leverage it and make the most of that environment. And I find that the most forward-thinking brands are really embracing it very well. So Joules would be an example. It's a very well-known high street brand, beautiful products. They work very closely with us about what's the range that works for a marketplace customer on eBay and how do they make their product stand out. And so it's been an evolution of our product suite, but we can develop our product when we're having conversations with brands and we understand what they need. And when we're really into those conversations, I find that we're starting to deliver clearly by the volume of businesses and brands on the site needs that they have.
You know, when you've obviously got a lot of competitors, and I suppose this period of time has increased some of those competitors like you were talking about for your business. Is it actually good that the brands you work with are working with other ones too? Does it kind of help the mindset that you were talking about in terms of wanting to work with marketplaces if they are sort of working with others too, which is sort of counterintuitive, I guess, to most situations?
The principle for me is that eBay will offer a market where there's lots and lots of buyers. So I talked about the 27 million buyers. We've got lots of buyers, and therefore I want that inventory. Equally, that brand needs to think about other distribution channels. And that, as you said, Ian, they've proliferated in the last few years, and they just continue to multiply. And it's great that a brand considers all the different places that it wants to be. Ultimately, you need a channel which will get buyers, as in the buyer will show up and they will convert and they will spend money and hopefully they'll come back again, right? And so that's really my primary job, that I can make sure that I've got enough buyers that will continue to buy. And therefore, it's all about a safe and trusted experience for the buyer. I know that I'm going to be treated well, that I can have confidence in the transaction. And if there's a problem, that problem will be resolved. And then therefore that gives confidence in the brand in wanting to be with me. That they can also do that in other places. My job is to make sure I do it as well and better in some instances than competitors will.
We've seen, across Europe, I mentioned our marketplaces report. We're tracking, I think it's about 145 marketplaces that range from places to buy and sell lead toy soldiers, specialised in the Napoleonic War, car parts, etc. And if you add in non-transactional marketplaces, so listing sites, it's probably 500. We're now seeing that around 53% of all consumer visits across Europe go to marketplaces first. So the first thing a consumer does is point their browser at one of these marketplaces. Look, it's no surprise that across Europe you're one of the biggest ones. What factors do you think there are that are driving this level of ongoing connection with the consumer? So we've mentioned trust. I think trust around payment, trust around the fact that there are people behind it. We get that. What else is there that stops at 27 million becoming 2 million.
So you mean, why will the buyer be staying with eBay as opposed to going to one of the alternatives? Or
Yes, and growing as well. This has grown 5 percentage points in 2 years. So marketplaces are actually increasing their share of consumer preference visits. So what's the secret? What should I be looking at to, engage the customer more?
So buyers tell us again and again they love selection and they love value. That's what's fundamentally important to them. And value means sometimes it's about the price, sometimes it's about I'm finding something unique. I'm finding something that's end of line and no longer available anywhere else. There's tons of demand for that kind of stuff. And so by having that in one place, the consumer feels that they can shop a plethora of goods that then keeps them happy and satisfies that need. I think it's amazing that the proliferation of marketplaces enables there to be niche interests which are catered for. You have specific interests which are very difficult to offer in a fully horizontal environment, and those niche interests are best catered for sometimes in those places. However, I think you can still bring together a breadth of selection across tens of millions of products, which is the case in eBay, which is really what keeps the customer coming back. And that's what we hear again and again. So what I generally find is there's still lots more inventory out there from lots of brands and lots of retailers that they need to get in front of customers in a cost-effective way. Yeah. Physical store isn't the way to do that. Some online channels are not a profitable way to do that. And a marketplace offers an economic and scaled way to get in front of customers without all the marketing costs associated with it. So, eBay plays a brilliant role in, I've got inventory which I don't want to be necessarily on my own web store. I don't want it to take up retailing space that's very valuable for me. I have a specific need to get this stuff in front of customers. And that's where we offer a kind of an effective solution.
Interesting. And so as you look at the months ahead, what are the directions of travel, the areas of interest that you're going to be working on that we're going to be seeing available to retailers the coming year? Because everyone's looking now for something new so we can get this mythical bounce back that we were sort of promised, but it's not exactly as easy as it sounds. So what have you got coming up that you're excited about?
Yeah, the first thing to say is that this isn't directly a product solution, but the first thing is, as I mentioned earlier on, we've had an acceleration in the number of brands that are picking up the phone and we're having conversations with. And these are conversations that have often been in development over a number of years, but the number of times that those conversations are now happening, the frequency has increased exponentially as brands and retailers said, actually, I need to really get to grips with this and understand how to get my product out there in a scaled way. And so the piece that's going to transform is I think we're going to see a massive acceleration in the number of brands and retailers that are leveraging a marketplace and leveraging the online environment to grow their business. And I think that will be effective. In the last 60 days, Lyle & Scott, Gant, Sea Salt, expansion of our existing brands and retailers, for example, Curry's Outlet, all of that has happened in a very fast space. I was speaking with a very large fashion retailer yesterday who we've been speaking with for 5 years, and they've launched on eBay in 90 days in the last period, right? That's the transformation.
So tell me that was 5 years of strategy and planning, or was it 5 years of not answering emails from Murray and then, go on then? So what tipped them over? I mean, it's trite to say, we're on a burning platform or COVID this, COVID that. Are you detecting that these revenue generating things have just got onto the top 10 list? Is it as simple as saying, look, it's COVID, stop asking questions? How come people can make a decision in no time when before they couldn't?
I mean, that's an amazing question for businesses in general, right? When you're in an emergency, you react differently. And guess what? Loads of businesses are finding themselves in an emergency, and then therefore they are responding. And topics that have been there's now more of a discussion at the board level about saying, okay, what's out there? What can we do and what can we unlock? And then that desire to both experiment and realize the value has moved up the agenda. Often these have been, we're managing a difficult environment in traditional retail. How do we evolve? And that's a slow evolution. And this has just exacerbated, I think, that evolution. So I would say in this example that I've given you, 5 years ago, it was, oh God, there's an email from eBay again. 3 years ago, it was, okay, this is kind of interesting and we should be talking. A year ago, we're going to do something within the next 2 years, but our roadmap's a bit busy. So this is the number one thing that we now need to do, which is really the conversation of the last 90 days. Yeah. And so That's why that conversation accelerated.
So, Murray, you strike me as a nice guy. I mean, all the other people I've met from eBay are lovely, but you are few and retailers are many. So just describe what help a retailer would get from you. Do they just call you up and say, come on, Murray, hold my hand, help me on? What is it? Because I know for the SME and the sole trader, and I'd encourage people to look at this as an example of documentation, the amount of help in the eBay knowledge base for getting up and running, it's fantastic. Whereas for a larger retailer, they might need a bit more complicated, a bit more help. Who's at the end of the phone or the email? Is there like an eBay Ghostbusters team that descends and gets you up and running in 5 days? Just talk me through what support there is to really motor.
I think my team would love to be described as an eBay Ghostbusters team. That's kind of nice. I mean, maybe we could do some rebranding, but in all seriousness,
it's a gift. My gift to you.
Thank you.
There's no copyright on that, I'm sure.
We run the team in the largest vertical areas. That covers the big chunk of our business and most brands and retailers. So fashion, home and garden, white goods, home technology, vehicle parts and accessories, etc., etc. Each team has a dedicated core team that helps understand, share with the brand and retailer what demand we see on the platform. And then we have a technical integration team that we work with once we've understood that the opportunity is there to help make sure that that brand launches on the platform in the way that they want to show up. And that's what we're there for. Now, with that team are extremely busy, but we will always prioritise the work that we need, especially where we see demand on the platform. What's striking for me is the disconnect between the amount of demand I have coming in from these 27 million buyers, because they may be buying a lot every month, but they're also searching for a lot more inventory that they can't find, and that inventory often isn't available online. And so what I'm then getting the team to do is be reaching out to brands. And when we do contact a brand or a retailer, it's because we're saying we genuinely have a need here. We have a gap in what consumers want. We're not there to compete with you. We're there to offer you a platform and opportunity. And hopefully it's a win-win-win, right? So genuinely, we want the brand and retailers to sell their product. That helps clearly eBay, and therefore the buyer's getting what they want. And they're in this place. So that's really what we're trying to do here.
Sounds like you're in a great position. Obviously, lots of buyers and lots of sellers. You're finding them, and it's all going well. I guess it does the nice headache, I suspect, come that you've actually got a service to Ian's point about bringing them on board all these additional businesses. Is that something that keeps you awake at night, or is that a well-oiled machine that just runs away and you don't need to think about it?
During this last period, we've seen a massive acceleration of businesses registering. We saw around 60,000 new businesses register to start selling on eBay in the last 90 days. And many of them are doing that through a self-serve set of platforms, right? And many large brands will also come to the site and register and get going. What we're there to do is often step in and help more when we've identified them and see them there. We also have a massive network of partners that we work with. So on the platform, I have lots of other businesses that when the brand or the retailer actually doesn't want to manage this channel in addition to their existing channels, we will work with them in order to help them get their inventory on the platform. So suddenly somebody else is taking the workload away. So, for example, we've massively expanded the range of Lego. We've massively expanded the range from Unilever and Procter & Gamble in the last 6 months. And that's all been done through partners. So we work with an existing eBay seller that understands us implicitly, is a super high quality business, employing lots of good people who can then service them. So I try and leverage a network beyond my network to make sure that brands and retailers, and often that route is very fast and very effective for the types of brands and retailers that might need more handholding and more support than I might be able to offer.
That's a very good point. Now, when I talk to retailers who are trading their site to the coalface, it's very personal to them. They're making the product selection, they're working with the algorithms, they're tweaking the knobs and dials. It's the warp and weft of their trading. It's tempting to see a marketplace as a remove. Look, I've given you the feed, just bring me the sales. Now, we know it's not like that, but if you were talking to a head of e-commerce saying, there's all this sales waiting here for you, but there are 2 or 3 things that you need to pay attention to or change your behavior or focus. What 2 or 3 things would you add to their brain to really help them get the most out of the sales opportunities via eBay?
What is critical is getting the inventory well displayed and really high quality of exposure of that product. And although it sounds very trite as a comment, it is not leveraged in enough cases to really make the most of the opportunity. And launching successfully, getting your inventory well displayed is the key thing to get you started, and making the most of the ecosystem really is. And then there are a surprising number of basics which still we work very closely with brands and retailers on helping them understand. Is the level of service standards are so competitive that you really need to be very thoughtful in terms of speed of dispatch, speed of receipt. This is less of an issue than it was a couple of years ago, but it is still prevalent. And I think what's interesting is often larger brands and retailers aren't able to meet the service standards quickly and effectively at the start, and we need to lend a hand, either through another partner or give them closer guidance, because there are a lot of small to medium businesses out there that are offering outstanding services to consumers, right? And they're nailing it. They're doing an amazing job. They're dispatching the item within a matter of hours. The item's arriving within 2 days, and they're offering a great returns proposition. And so my job is often to talk to a brand and retailer about the environment they might find themselves in online, and kind of give them a sense of, actually, this is the benchmark you need to get to. It doesn't always go down brilliantly well, the conversation, but it is a reality, right? That's just the reality of where you're competing.
But also, I think it's a change of mindset from buying a store and dominating those square meters to having to dominate every transaction and win every sale. It is a different mindset. Just wrapping up then, we're all sitting cozy and probably slightly cabin fevered in our home offices. Are you looking forward to going back into the office, or is it home working forever for you now? What's your thought on what office life is going to be like come Christmas?
I miss massively being out and talking to people face to face and having those interactions. And it's not so much about the office environment. I think eBay's been well set up and is working virtually for a long time. But I miss more than anything going out to meet businesses and talk to them and actually understand their needs. Going to the warehouse, understanding, here's the inventory, this is what we need to get. How do we get all of this stuff online and displayed well? And trying to work through the problems. There's nothing like seeing it for real. So I'm hoping that comes back to reality by the end of the year.
Great. Well, look, Murray, we're hoping so too. And it'd be nice to catch up with you within a meter, no closer, of course. Thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. And hopefully we'll hear back from you soon when maybe we're allowed to get out and about and chat to people.
Absolute pleasure. Lovely to meet you. Take care. See you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Hey, thanks again, Murray. Extraordinary to ponder the 60,000 new sellers on eBay in 90 days. Dynamic times indeed. So that's the end of our bumper edition. It's thanks from Jamie and me, and we look forward to bringing you our next episode very soon. In the meantime, keep safe, wash those hands, and happy trading.